She called me embarrassing at dinner. She didn't know I owned the restaurant. Hey, my name is Marcus. I'm 31 years old. And the last thing my sister said to me before her world fell apart was, and I quote, "Can you please stop embarrassing me in front of people who actually matter?" She said that to me. At a restaurant. While she was sitting in a chair that I paid for. Eating food that my chef cooked. In a building that had my name on the lease. She didn't know that, of course. That's the thing about people who look down on you. They never bother to look closely enough to see what's actually right in front of them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because this story didn't start at that dinner table. It started a long time ago. In a small house in Columbus, Ohio, where I learned very early that in my family, some children were worth investing in. And some were just there to fill space. I was the space filler. My family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Gerald, was a high school football coach. Loud, charismatic, the kind of man who commanded a room just by walking into it. My mother, Diane, was a real estate agent who wore her smile like armor. And then there was my sister, Vanessa. 4 years older than me, prettier by everyone's standards, sharper with her words, and completely, utterly, my parents' favorite. I knew it before I could even put a word to it. It was in the small things first. Vanessa got dance lessons. Got hand-me-down sneakers. Vanessa's artwork went on the refrigerator. Mine went in the recycling bin with a polite, "That's nice, sweetheart." When Vanessa made the honor roll, my parents threw a dinner party. When I made the honor roll the following year, same school, same teachers, my father looked up from his newspaper and said, "Good. Keep it up." That was it. Keep it up. Kept it up. I kept everything up, my grades, my behavior, my silence. I became the quiet one. The invisible one. The one teachers forgot to call on and relatives forgot to ask about at Christmas. While Vanessa performed in school plays and my parents sat in the front row with a video camera, I sat in the back and watched them beam at her like she was made of sunlight. I wasn't angry then. I was just confused. I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. That if I just tried a little harder, smiled a little bigger, maybe I'd finally get a seat at the table. What I didn't understand yet was that the table was already full, and there was no room being saved for me. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped trying to compete with Vanessa and started trying to survive. I got a part-time job at a local diner, not because we needed the money, but because I needed somewhere to be where people noticed me. The owner, a heavy-set Greek man named Costa, took one look at me washing dishes on my first day and said, "You don't belong back here. Come up front. I'll teach you to cook." And just like that, something shifted inside me. I learned everything Costa would teach me. How to read a kitchen. How to balance flavors. How to make something out of almost nothing. He used to say, "Marcus, food is the one language every human being speaks fluently." I believed him. For the first time in my life I was good at something, not just academically good but genuinely, passionately good. Felt like breathing. My parents didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't say. They were busy paying for Vanessa's college applications, her campus visits, her new laptop. When it was my turn, my father sat me down and said, with no apology whatsoever, "We're a little stretched thin. You're going to have to figure out something on your own." And then he went back to watching football. Figured it out. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked doubles at the diner on weekends. I got into a culinary program on a partial scholarship and covered the rest myself. And not once, not a single time, did my parents ask how I was managing it. Vanessa called from her university dorm every Sunday. Called from mine and got voicemail. I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm saying it so you understand what I built and why it matters. Because everything I achieved, every single thing I built alone. With my hands. With Costa's teachings rattling around in my head. With the kind of hunger that has nothing to do with food. After culinary school, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I spent 3 years cooking in other people's kitchens. Learning, saving, watching how the business side worked. Ate cheap. Lived small. My apartment was barely bigger than some of the walk-in refrigerators I worked in. But I had a plan. And I was quiet about it the way I'd always been quiet, Not because I had nothing to say, but because I'd learned that the less you share with certain people, the less they can underestimate you. At 28, I opened Ember and Oak. It was a 40-seat restaurant in a renovated building in Midtown Charlotte. Contemporary Southern cuisine. That was my vision. The kind of food that tasted like memory but felt like discovery. I did everything right. I sourced locally. I trained my staff carefully. I kept my name off the press releases for the first year because I wanted the food to speak first. Spoke loudly. Within 8 months, Ember and Oak had a 6-week waitlist. A food critic from a major publication called it a revelation in a city full of noise. We got a nod from a regional culinary board. My second year I was turning a real profit. My third year I opened a second location. I didn't tell my family any of this. Not because I was hiding it exactly. It was more that they had never asked. Not once in 3 years had my parents or Vanessa called to ask how my little cooking thing was going. That's what my father had called it once. My little cooking thing. So I let them keep thinking it was little. I want you to understand how deliberate that was. It wasn't pettiness. It was clarity. I had learned, through many years of quiet observation, that my family only got interested in things that already had social proof. They didn't believe in people. They believed in results they could brag about. So I waited. I waited until the results were undeniable. And then Vanessa called. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing produce orders in my office when my phone buzzed. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 14 months. I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment before I answered. Marcus. She was warm. Warmer than I'd heard her in years. Oh my gosh, how are you? I feel terrible that we've been so out of touch. I felt my stomach tighten slightly. This kind of warmth from Vanessa always meant something was coming. I'm well, I said carefully. You? She told me she was wonderful. She'd recently gotten engaged to a man named Derek, a financial analyst from a wealthy family in Charleston. She was planning the engagement dinner and wanted it to be somewhere really impressive. She'd heard about this new restaurant in Charlotte called Ember and Oak. Everyone's talking about it, she said. I thought it would be so perfect for the dinner. Derek's parents are very particular. I'm sure they are, I said. Could you maybe call ahead and get us a reservation? I know you're in the restaurant world, so maybe you have some connections. Pause. I let the silence breathe for just a moment. I can make sure you're taken care of, I told her. She squealed with delight. She didn't ask me anything about myself. She didn't ask how business was or where I was living or if I was seeing anyone. She thanked me, reminded me the dinner was in 3 weeks on a Saturday, said, "You're the best, little brother," and hung up. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling of my office. My office. In my restaurant. And I thought, okay, let's see how this plays out. I didn't tell my reservation team who Vanessa was. I simply booked the table under her name and made sure it was one of our best. The round corner table near the window with a view of the courtyard. I arranged for my head sommelier to personally manage their wine selections. I planned to cook myself that evening, which I didn't always do for service anymore. But that night I wanted to be in the kitchen. What I didn't plan for was arriving early and overhearing the conversation before I'd even walked through the kitchen door. I came in through the side entrance, the one that connects directly to the host stand through a short hallway. The wall between the hallway and the dining room is thin. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. Just stop. Because I heard Vanessa's voice. Loud and performative, the way she got when she was trying to impress people. We almost went to Marigold, she was saying. But honestly, the service there has gotten so inconsistent. I have connections here, so I was able to pull some strings. She laughed lightly. That's just how it is when you know people. I know people. Like I was a parking valet she'd slipped $20 to. I heard Derek's mother murmur something polite. Oh, I know the family who has some involvement, Vanessa continued, breezy and vague. My brother does something in food. Nothing major. But he has some contacts. Something in food. Nothing major. Closed my eyes. Breathe. And then I felt it. That old familiar sting I'd spent years learning to live with. But underneath the sting, something else. Something much calmer. Because I realized, standing in that hallway, that I had a choice. I could go back to the kitchen, cook the best meal of their lives, and let Vanessa keep performing. Or I could let the truth speak for itself. Chose the truth. I changed out of my street clothes and into my chef's whites. My name is embroidered on the left chest. Marcus Webb, Executive Chef. I pushed through the kitchen doors and began cooking. The meal took 3 hours. Course by course, my team executed perfectly. The table was happy. I could tell from the way the energy in the dining room shifted the way it always does when a meal is working. I waited until the dessert course had been cleared. And then I walked out. I came through the main kitchen door and crossed the dining room quietly. Several of the regulars nodded at me as I passed. The staff smiled. I walked directly to Vanessa's table. She looked up and her expression moved through about 4 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. Surprise. Confusion. Forced happiness. Then, just for a fraction of a moment, something that looked almost like fear. Marcus. She stood up and hugged me a little too firmly. What are you doing here? I work here, I said simply. Derek smiled and extended his hand. Great meal, man. Seriously, one of the best I've had. Thank you. I shook his hand and turned to his parents, introducing myself. His mother, a composed woman in pearls, said, "Are you one of the chefs here?" Before I could answer, Vanessa laughed. That particular laugh of hers that was designed to minimize. He's in the kitchen, yes. He does some cooking. I own the restaurant, I said. Quietly, clearly, without any particular emphasis, the way you'd state any simple fact. Ember and Oak. Both locations. I've owned it for 3 years. The table went silent. I watched Vanessa's face. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. It wasn't triumph, exactly. It was something more complex than that. It was the specific sensation of a thing that has been held underwater for a very long time finally breaking the surface. Derek's father leaned forward with genuine interest. You built this from the ground up? I did. Started in a 40-seat space. We're at 2 locations now, working on a 3rd. That's remarkable, Derek's mother said warmly. Vanessa, you must be so proud of your brother. Vanessa's smile had gone very tight. Of course, she said. Yes, absolutely. But I wasn't finished. Not quite. Because earlier that week, I had received a call from a journalist at a regional business magazine. They wanted to run a profile on Ember and Oak and its expansion. The article was scheduled to run the following month. A photographer had already been in. My name, my face, my story, all of it documented. I wasn't going to announce it at the table. I didn't need to. But then Vanessa did something. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was the social performance reflex kicking in at the worst possible moment. She turned to Derek's parents with a smile and said quietly, but not quietly enough. He's always been a bit much. I hope the service was good. Sorry if he embarrassed you by coming out here unannounced. Table heard it. Derek heard it. His mother heard it. And I heard it. Embarrassing. There it was. That word. I looked at my sister for a long moment. I thought about the refrigerator with her artwork on it. The dinner parties for her honor roll. The voicemails I got instead of answers. The little cooking thing. The nothing major. The connections she'd claimed at my table in my restaurant to impress people she wanted to matter to. Smiled. Genuinely, I think, for the first time all evening. It was lovely to meet everyone, I said to Derek's family. Please, dessert is on the house. I hope tonight was worth the trip. I turned and walked back toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Derek's mother say to Vanessa, her voice carrying that perfectly polite sharpness that only certain kinds of women can deploy. He seems like a remarkable young man. You must tell me more about him. I didn't hear Vanessa's response. I didn't need to. 3 weeks later, the magazine profile ran. A full 4-page spread. My photograph on the cover of the business section. The headline, From Dishwasher to Double Location. Marcus Webb's Ember and Oak is redefining Charlotte's culinary scene. The article covered everything: culinary school, the early years, the launch, the growth. It mentioned I had a third location in development, and that I was being considered for a regional culinary award. My mother called me the morning the article hit newsstands. First time she'd called on a weekday in I couldn't count how long. "Marcus," she said. Her voice had a new quality to it, something between pride and discomfort. I had no idea. "Why didn't you tell us?" I sat with that question for a moment. Why didn't I tell you? I thought about every Sunday phone call that went to voicemail. Every birthday that passed with a text. Every achievement I'd reached with zero audience except myself. "You never asked," I said. She was quiet for a long time. "We'd love to come see the restaurant," she finally said. "I'd love that too," I told her. And I meant it. Not out of bitterness, but out of something that had started to feel, cautiously, like the possibility of something new. "Let me know your dates and I'll make sure you're taken care of." Vanessa texted me that same afternoon. A long message, full of exclamation points and emojis, telling me how proud she was and how she'd been telling everyone about her brother's restaurant for ages. I read it twice. I didn't respond for several days. When I did, I kept it short. Warm but short. Some bridges, once they've been allowed to fall into disrepair for long enough, aren't meant to be rebuilt overnight. They're meant to be approached slowly, carefully, and only if both people are willing to do the work. As for Derek's family, his mother, Patricia, turned out to be a woman with an extensive social network in the Charlotte area. She became a regular at Ember and Oak. She brought friends. She brought her book club. She recommended us to her charity board for their annual gala dinner, a contract that added significantly to our catering revenue that year. She also, apparently, told Vanessa at some point that her brother was one of the most impressive self-made people she'd ever met. Vanessa relayed this to me on the phone with a laugh that didn't quite land right. I received it graciously. It's been 2 years since that dinner. The third location of Ember and Oak opened 6 months ago. A larger space, a full bar program, private dining rooms. We won the Regional Culinary Award. I was invited to speak at a culinary school commencement, which felt like a quiet, full-circle moment I hadn't expected to hit me as hard as it did. My relationship with my parents is better. Slowly, carefully better. My father came to the restaurant last spring, sat at the bar, ate a full meal, and at the end told me with some visible effort that he was proud of me. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and I chose to receive it as something rather than hold it up against everything it wasn't. Vanessa and I are cordial. We're not close. I don't think we'll ever be the kind of siblings who call each other every Sunday. But at Christmas last year, she pulled me aside before dinner and said, quietly and without performance, "I think I've been a bad sister to you. I'm sorry." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I told her I appreciated it, and that I hoped we could build something different going forward. She nodded. Her eyes were wet. "I'm telling you this story not because I want you to feel sorry for me. I don't need that. And not because I want you to be angry at my family on my behalf. That's not useful to either of us. I'm telling you this because I spent too many years believing that being invisible meant I wasn't worth seeing. That the silence from the people who should have celebrated me meant I had nothing worth celebrating. I was wrong. And the lesson took me longer to learn than it should have. But I learned it. The restaurant is quiet in the mornings before service. I come in early, I always have. I walk the dining room. Check on the kitchen. I drink my coffee at the corner table by the window. The same one where my sister sat the night everything changed. And I think about Costa and his cramped diner kitchen, and how he pointed at me across a pile of dirty dishes and said, "You don't belong back here." He was right. I belonged exactly where I am. If you're someone who's been told, through words or through silence, that you don't quite measure up, that your achievements are nothing major, that you're a little too much, a little too embarrassing, a little too invisible, I want you to hear this. Build anyway. Build quietly if you have to. Build while no one is watching, while no one is calling, while no one is asking. Build until the truth of what you've made speaks so loudly that the people who underestimated you can hear it from across a dining room. Because the table you build for yourself, No one can take that seat from you. No one.